Did you know that North Carolina is the 5th most visited state in the United States? We're going to get real, for real, with the Director of Marketing with Visit North Carolina, Scott Peacock, coming up on the award-winning Paradise in the Pines. Welcome to Paradise in the Pines, a podcast about the people, places, and stories that make this the home of American golf. Brought to you by the Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. Scott Peacock, Director of Marketing, VisitNC. Welcome to Paradise in the Pines.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be in Paradise today.
You've seen our podcast kind of morph over the last couple of years. The third year, you're our first guest in the third year. We're an award-winning podcast now. We're at NCTIA. And,
yes. Congratulations, everybody, for that.
We're excited about that.
Well deserved.
We appreciate that. So you've been with VisitNC. You kind of left and you came back, and you regretted that. Everybody makes mistakes.
We do.
You came back to VisitNC. How long have you been with the organization?
Yeah, I worked here in 2015. I moved to North Carolina in 2015 from Ohio, and there we go, Midwest.
Stand back there. He's from Ohio.
All right, my guy. And then and I was here at the Bureau for 2 years, and then I left and went to work at Visit Raleigh for 6 years to head up their international tourism and PR program. And then I left to join the tech world post-pandemic and had a cup of coffee in the tech world and realized it was definitely not my jam and decided to come back to tourism. So I called Wit Tuttell, the executive director of Visit North Carolina and former guest on this show, and was a dog, with my tail between my legs, asking him to please take me back. So I've been back since, 2021. So it's been coming up my third year coming back. So glad to be back at the state overseeing the marketing and PR efforts, for us on the domestic level and above.
When you think about state tourism, I think typically most people think dozens of people, 50, 100 people. Right. You've got a staff of what, a dozen people?
Yeah, we do.
Talk about the staff and the Herculean effort it takes to promote an entire state like North Carolina.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's a great, message point. We have a staff of 12 and a half right now. I have half body. I don't even have a full-time, position for one of those spots right now. And we're all centralized in Raleigh. So it's not like we have field offices around the state like some states do. We are a very small and mighty team, and we feel like we punch well above our weight class when you look at the results.
Yeah.
But that's how we're structured right now. We're pretty lean and efficient with our use, and we've got a lot of partners out there that help us out. We work with marketing agencies and PR agencies, and international offices to help us get some representation. We do work with Travel South, which is a group that is all 12 of the southern states that help promote themselves internationally. So there's some efficiencies we have in how we do our marketing and public relations efforts because we only have 12 people in-house and limited resources. But it's a very good question. We are outgunned in budget and in size by all of our competitors, but we work real hard.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah. Your budget, I think, at one point was $18 million. Now I think it's around 12 or 13. You look at Virginia, talk about Virginia and South Carolina, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. We're talking millions, dozens millions more dollars to promote their states, and yet North Carolina is 5th in the country. How does that happen?
Yeah, I think when you look at the budgets over the last couple of years for DMOs at a state level have increased significantly. We were, 34th most funded state tourism office last year in 2024. And it's not a good place to be. No. You'd like to have more money than that. We're behind states like Mississippi. We're behind all of our competitive states and, surrounding us as well. But what we have been able to do with that is look at the budget we have and make sure that we're efficiently spending it and putting the right, pieces together in the right place. But yes, as a whole, South Carolina, West Virginia, Tennessee all outspend us by at least $20 million a year. So our budget is significantly underfunded for the amount of effort that we're putting forth out there.
What has been the greatest challenge? Obviously you have legislators that have budgets that can allocate. You've asked for millions of dollars from the state. You got a fraction of that. What is it? I'm not asking you to be too critical of our lawmakers, but obviously everybody wants a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So when the 5th best tourism state in the country, you would think that's evidence to show, hey, if you give us more money, we can do even better.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great question. I think it's a couple things. I think that we have become a victim of our own success in the standpoint that with that low funding level, we've been able to climb to be the 5th most visited state. So some people look at it and say, you're doing just fine with what little bit you have. Like you're good, so complacency a little bit there. And then I think the other thing is telling our story a little bit better. We are the 5th most visited state, but we were the 6th, and we jumped up to 5th, right? And more importantly, if you look at who is 6th, 7th, and 8th, and how far behind, which is very minimal amount we are, that they are from us, the risk that we have in not increasing the funding here in North Carolina is that we could go from 5th to 8th or 9th overnight.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the message that we're taking to the legislature right now to talk about. We have always been good stewards of the money. That's very evident by the history and the success of the organization. But what we need to do now is invest more so that we can continue to hold the market share that we have and grow it into the future. Our goal as a state, right now, state tourism office, is to be the #1 state in the East, excluding Florida perhaps, because we're not trying to get to Florida levels of visitation.
Right.
And when you think about that and you draw the map that way, we are #2 right now behind New York State. And so that goal of trying to get more visitation to North Carolina in a sustainable way would allow us to grow ahead of New York State and be only really at that point second behind Florida as the entire East Coast goes for visitation.
Sure.
But Tennessee, South Carolina, and Georgia are nipping at our heels. And that's what I was referencing before. If we were to slip a little bit, they are so close to us that they could easily jump us. And the other thing to think about is we want to do it in a sustainable way. We don't want to just bring more visitors in overcrowded areas that are so overcrowded. So what we do at a state level is make sure that our marketing efforts are complementing marketing efforts such as yours and bringing people in your times of need, right? So we work with you guys and we say, okay, what are your lower areas of need? What time of the season, what seasons of the year are you seeing a less visitation? And how can we work with you to find the right story to tell to get more people to come during that time of need?
Sure.
So you won't see us doing a ton of extra promotion for the beaches in the summer, for example. They don't need it. They're doing just fine. But we will promote beach travel in the off season to all my Midwestern brethren and friends and family, who are looking to get out. So that's where the Ohio connection comes into play. So
we were talking about rankings. Everybody wants to be #1. So talk about what that means to the consumer. If you have more dollars, what does that mean to the consumer, to the visitor of North Carolina? What are those things that are going to make more people come, but then have it be a more tangible experience for them?
Yeah, so if from a tangible standpoint, if we were to get more funding, there's a lot of things that we'd like to do with that. And one of them would be looking at our outdoor NC initiative that we have that you guys participate in, where we could then blow that program up and get more DMOs around the state, more areas and cities and regions around the state to participate in it. And that program is fantastic because as you are aware, what it does is works to educate twofold. It educates the local DMO and tourism office on how to understand sustainable travel and tourism and how to get people to come visit your area, but make sure that they leave a small, if not zero impact on the natural beauty that your area has. So it's here for generations to come.
Right.
And then we also reach out to the visitors to encourage them to think about their travel patterns and where they're going and what they're doing when they're here so that they are hearing about it as well. So if we're encouraging the locals in the state or the local DMOs to understand it and to work with their local businesses to care about it, and if we're also encouraging the visitors out there to understand that it's something that's important to North Carolina because natural beauty is our state's calling card and it is our job to protect it. If we can do that, a push and a pull, then we have a gravitas that is going to make a better visitor experience for people when they come to the state, when they want to go to some of our places like the mountains and go for hikes, when they want to go to the beach in the summer. How do you understand how you can go there in the summer, but leave the sand dunes alone, for example. Don't climb over them. They serve a purpose. We're going to need them in the fall when the hurricanes come. Right. So those are a couple of tangible examples of how we can help to ensure a better visitor experience by having more money. We also would be using that money to target, like I said, off-season travel, which no doubt provides a better visitor experience because if you're coming to an area in a time when there's not as many people there, you're going to have more room to breathe. You're not going to have to wait in line as long. You're going to be able to get better access, quicker access to food and attractions and, maybe some lower rates on your lodging. All those things make it a better, more attractive experience for people. So those are some of the things that would happen if we had more funding to market.
It's interesting. You mentioned the visitor, but we also serve our community. So, and it's interesting you mentioned the outdoors because until we started exploring that, we didn't even know we had 32 trails in Moore County. And then we're like, wow, we got 32 trails here. And see, Reservoir Park and Weymouth Woods State Park are some of the more prolific ones. But there's some other ones, too, that people in the northern end of the county can enjoy. And then part of our Pinecone Pathways program got them out into those areas. And then with the Trail Towns program, that, again, talk about how we impact our communities, not so much the visitors that come here, but our own communities, so they can take pride in the place where they live.
100%. It's so easy for communities to look at visitors as the enemy and to say, oh, too many visitors, they're the ones clogging everything up and making it hard for me to get in and out or around or eat or whatever. But the reality is, if we look at it from an embracement standpoint, there's so much more to be gained there. And so it starts with educating our locals and our residents about what's in their own backyard. You were probably not the only resident down here that didn't know how many trails and greenways existed in the area. So that's a prime example of, we often are looking elsewhere. Where's our next vacation? Where do we want to go? And we don't think about what's in our own backyard. So I think the important role that we have is to educate our residents on what's in their own backyard, and then turn them into evangelists. Get them excited that A, they're not looking to leave all the time, and that B, they maybe next year call their in-laws and say, why don't you come here for Christmas instead of us going to you?
Right.
And we'd love to show you around, right? That's the magic, in working with our residents and to understand the value of the visitor economy, first off. So how much visitors mean to the area and to local businesses and how much they're supportive of them. And then also looking at it on the flip side of saying, how can we help support this and grow economic development for the entire region? Because that's really what tourism is economic development. It's really the entryway into broader economic. It all starts with a visit. No one's going to relocate a business or come and start a business in an area without visiting it first. So we think that it's the front porch to economic development here in the South, no doubt.
We go to tourism conferences all the time. We go to ESTO. We go to Southeast Travel Society, things like that. VisitNC has your annual tourism conference, which we love going to. It's going to be in Hickory this year in April. And we're proud that we're the 10th highest tourism economy in the state of North Carolina. How fun is it to get together with, DMOs like ours that have, a $3.9 million budget, to Raleigh, to Durham, to the Outer Banks, to see everybody come together and really have a spirit of North Carolina when we go to these conferences, that we're all evangelists for the state.
It's probably the biggest family reunion of the year. And I say that, family for people and family because you're going to leave with new family. And that's what's so great about the industry as well, is we're so open and welcoming, and there's so many new people that are coming into the tourism industry here in North Carolina at the DMO level, at the attraction level, and at event planning level as well. And so it's an exciting opportunity to gather everybody once a year and just to talk shop. To hear that you're not the only one dealing with the same issue, or to get inspired by an idea that somebody else had of how to solve a problem that you're looking to solve. I mean, those are some of the best things that come out of it, is the small conversations you have with someone, intangible, not necessarily always the big keynote speakers and presentations, but that's also the exciting thing for me as a person that's in charge of the programming and looking at, what do we want to offer at the conference, is what do we think are things that are going to be most relevant this year for the tourism industry, and how do we make sure that everybody's aware of it? And so I was on the car ride down here, listening to a couple of different podcasts, just trying to think about, I've got one opening left for a keynote speaker, and I've got to find the right slot for it. So I've got a couple of ideas marinating in my head, but I'll let you guys in on it. Where I'm thinking right now is, and this is a good segue into AI, large language models. So the actual, software that is, running and powering ChatGPT and Gemini is large language models. And so how do we, as tourism entities, as DMOs, as the experts in our area, how do we, as attractions, and hotels, as the experts of our products, get our information from our existing websites to be more easily searchable by those large language models? Because the reality is,
no doubt,
in the next couple of years, the majority of the traffic to anyone's website is going to be a bot.
Yep.
It's not going to be a human, because we're all going to go to Google, which we can do today, right? And we can search best things to do in Pinehurst. And Gemini, the AI-empowered search, is going to be the first thing you see now, not even the paid search options for Google. And Gemini is going to give you an answer of the things to do in Pinehurst based off of what it's finding out there on the internet. So I think it's really imperative upon us to take the expertise that we have and the content that we provided and find the right way to get it served to those large language models. So that's like one idea that I had.
And that's right. We have a staff of 4 people, but we are primarily a content marketing machine. We just develop content. If it's out there, AI can find it and put it on that website. In fact, we talk about, well, first of all, let's talk about the importance of content, of owned content, what that means and why that is so vital when you're competing against DMOs, not just across our state, but across the country.
Yeah. A good example, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. Okay. Yeah. So if you look at the DMO model and playbook, over the last couple of decades, it's like the same playbook, just insert a different budget. Maybe your budget's smaller, maybe your budget's bigger, but the way that we spend the budget and how we go out and market and promote the destination has been the same for so long. It's this much in paid search advertising and this much in social media and this much in our SEO. And, it's all the same. We're all doing the same thing. Some of us have more money than others to do it. So if that's the case, then inherently the DMOs with the largest budgets are always going to win. So I think it's imperative on us to do something different and to borrow, the analogies and the wisdom of our friend Stuart down in Myrtle Beach, who's a big proponent of this. Think outside the box, and that's really where having an owned media content strategy comes into play. And so what we're talking about here is instead of going out to a media vendor and using them to find your audience, instead of spending money with Facebook or with Google to go out and find a potential traveler and get them to go through the pipeline and come and visit, why not create that audience yourself? Because then you own that audience. So for example, by doing a podcast like this, you get people to subscribe. You get people to opt in and follow the podcast and get information on it. Well, first off, you're getting to tell your story directly to them, not having to do it through the rules or the confines of a media vendor. Mm-hmm. And secondly, you're now building an audience that is an evangelist and loves your area, and you can deploy them at any point in time to help you tell your story. And word of mouth is still always going to be more powerful than anything we can do on the paid side. So I think that's where things like podcast, things like your email and getting people to opt, first party data is big, right? We've talked in this industry for a couple of years now about the going away of cookies and what that really means for our industry. And for those of you that are not marketers that are listening, what we're talking about is we used to have a really solid way of...
We're not talking chocolate chip.
Yeah, exactly. Chips Ahoy, it's okay. Yeah. But we're talking about ways that you could track your results of your marketing efforts and know that somebody was seeing something and how you could kind of identify them on the internet. Mm-hmm. That's gone away. And so it's imperative on us to find a way to build our own audiences back up that we own. And that's something that's important to us, just like it is to you guys at the state level. We've been working for over a year and a half now on our owned media strategy. And the first thing that we've been doing is building up our opt-in database, getting more people to sign up for our emails, segmenting those email lists, saying, okay, if you're a visitor that's interested in the mountains, let's talk about mountains to you. If you're a visitor that's interested in the coast, where are you coming from? Are you more likely to travel last minute because you live a little bit closer to North Carolina than this visitor over here? Well, if that's the case, we can give you some last minute deals because you're actually able to enact upon them and travel. So really customizing the content for who you are and learning more about you. But all that starts with us having a content strategy that allows us to personalize things. And that all goes back to having our own database and our own people and our own visitors and potential visitors that we're talking to.
I think it's interesting for our destination because we're trademarked as the home of American golf. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Pinehurst Resort. We've got U.S. Opens from now to 2047. USGA moved here, World Golf Hall of Fame. But yet we find it incredibly important for those people that do not play golf because we get those phone calls all the time. What can I do besides play golf? So, while golf is our DNA and always will be, and we'll never forget that, it's important for us to tell those other stories, whether it be on the culinary side, the agritourism side, Seagrove. I mean, Seagrove, really, the heart of the town is not even in our county, but a lot of the Potters live in Moore County, like Ben Owen, Crystal King lives just over into Randolph County. But those stories, that regional tourism is also important too.
It is. I think that's a great example. When you think about what is it that's ultimately going to drive a visitor to come here, and then what's going to allow them to do what we all want, which is extend that stay, have a more meaningful trip, spend more time here. It's diversifying. And you guys have done such an amazing job with this destination. Credit to you guys at the DMO, and credit to the community for looking at itself as well years ago and saying, what can we do to help diversify and to be certainly the calling card being golf, but like what else can we do and offer? And even as someone that lives in myself in Raleigh, an hour away and comes down here all the time, the amount of growth and development in this area that isn't direct golf, but tangential to maybe a golfer coming through the area has been amazing. This is a hot spot for many reasons now. Golf first and foremost, but not the only reason anymore. And that's been really cool to see.
It's interesting. We talked about the VisitNC conference, and I used to give Wit Tuttell, your boss, a hard time because the hype reel at the VisitNC conference would be like, mountains, coast, mountains, coast. And then we get the obligatory golf shot at the very end. But now you guys just like put more golf in the hype reel. So it's like, okay, we've got US Opens now. I think, not saying you were overlooking golf, but I mean, I think the state understands now how important. Well, you got the PGA Championship at Coral Hollow in Charlotte this year, so not just saying Pinehurst owns golf. We do kind of, but at least from a statewide perspective, I think you guys understand. Mountains. I mean, we have such a diverse state.
Amazing courses.
Was it 12 hours from like Murphy to Manio? But in between, you got mountains, you got coast, you got golf courses all over the state. I'm on the state golf panel. I've played some spectacular golf courses from the mountains to the coast. It's a wealth of golf.
I agree, and that's what we've been trying to do from a golf messaging standpoint is talk about, and you yourself having personally experienced it being around the courses around the state. Our product is so diverse, and that's where we might stand out and be able to compete with a place like South Carolina, and all the golf that it's known for, and that it has. It's amazing, and people should experience. But there's a place for North Carolina in that story as well, because if you are, let's say you're just looking at coastal golf and you want to go to South Carolina, that's fine. We have amazing coastal golf here. Shout out to Brunswick County and the Outer Banks, amazing courses.
For sure.
But if that's what you want, go to South Carolina. Then come over to the border of North Carolina and come to the Sandhills or go play one of our mountain courses. And what a cool trip that is to be able to play in both terrains, in one golf trip. And there's a room for us to kind of share around that. So that's been one way we've kind of been working on diversifying the golf messaging is, what is most of interest to you and how do we complement a place like South Carolina versus directly have to compete with it?
One of the programs you were working on with Heidi Walters with VisitNC was a program you guys did with South Carolina. You mentioned South Carolina and golf down there, and you guys went to the Open Championship. I actually got nice of you to invite us to the Open Championship when it was at Royal Liverpool a couple years ago. Got to tell this story because I have never been to Europe. I was so looking forward to this trip to Manchester and then over to Royal Liverpool. And, we had the same flight. Scott and I were on the same flight flying from Raleigh-Durham to JFK to Manchester. And, summer afternoon, thunderstorms in New York are like, we're never going to make our flight. And then talk about I never made it.
This is one of those moments in life where the universe just did not want you to go there. Right. Because here we are at RDU trying to figure out what to do. We're talking to the gate agent. Okay, we can, we've got two paths here. We can't get you both seats on the same plane. So but here's one route. One route's going to go through Paris. And then come up into Liverpool, and the other route's going to go to Florida, and then direct from Florida, right into Manchester.
And you were like, I'll take the flight to Paris. It's just one seat. I'm going to have to go through two countries to get there, and you'll get easier. I think we're an hour apart.
As someone that hadn't traveled internationally, I'm like, I think I'll take the route that involves two customs, two countries.
You might have more problems.
Exactly. I'm like, you go. I go. I don't know if I'm going to make it. You go to Florida, and you'll be there before me. I guarantee you. That's the safer bet. So that was the decision we made. We're going to send you through Florida. I'm going to cross my fingers and say my prayers and hope I make it through France.
So I'm still waiting in Raleigh, and the flight to Orlando got delayed 4 times to the point where I asked the gate agent in Raleigh, I said, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure I'm going to make this flight if I take this flight to Orlando? Because at first he was kind of wavering, and then right as I was getting ready to get on the flight, he goes, oh, no, you'll be fine. I get to Orlando, the plane's gone. And so I lost my luggage and my golf clubs for a week.
More importantly.
Never made it over to the Open Championship. You guys did an awesome job promoting the state, both states, and then obviously North Carolina. But, I told... won't name the airline, but I said, look, you can lose my clothes. Don't lose my golf clubs because those are custom fitted for me.
Exactly.
And they're very special.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't you have an amateur event coming up?
I did.
I mean, we were under the gun to get them back in time for you to use them.
And then because of the PTSD I suffered, because you were very soon after you got back from a very successful campaign over there with our friends in South Carolina, you offered me to go back over to. And I said, Hell no. I don't want to fly from Pinehurst to Chapel Hill.
No.
It was just, it was brutal. But,
No.
but anyway, it was a fun little story. I
was.
enjoyed telling it. And I'm glad you got to go over there. I still
was a
have
great-
yet to get to Europe. But
It was a great campaign. It was very successful.
Yeah.
You know, for those that didn't, and most of these listeners won't have seen it because, to your point, this was a campaign that we did dedicated toward. You talked about how we're, you know, trying to increase and work more in the golf space. This was a campaign that Heidi Walters, our international tourism manager, came up with, where we worked to put together a campaign in the UK to drive more UK golfers to choose North Carolina when they're coming over for their golf trips. And we did it leading up to the U.S. Open, but also it started 2 years prior when the Open Championship was back in Scotland. And so we started with home and home. You gotta, if you love this, you gotta come to the home of American golf. And then the second year of the campaign was an activation at Royal Liverpool, the very year leading into it. And then we did a bunch of tournaments at some amazing private clubs in the UK where their members got to play in a tournament, and the winner of those tournaments went on to play in a master tournament, and the winner of that got an all expenses paid trip to come over here and check out the Open itself. But it fueled a lot of people that, whether they won or not, were just like, I want to go. I want to come to North Carolina. And so that was our goal, was to get more international visitors, because as we know, the reality is those visitors stay longer and spend more. They're some of our most lucrative visitors that have the biggest impact on our economy. And so we wanted to do more to get international golfers to consider North Carolina.
Let's talk about more recent times. It's amazing over the last few years. You've had to deal with COVID, multiple coastal storms, a hurricane that hit the mountains, and now you're still dealing with Helene. We're talking 3 months as we record this, 3 months after the fact. Western North Carolina, many places. I mean, you see Asheville, and obviously they get the lion's share of the publicity, but there's still so many areas in Western North Carolina. How do you deal with that crisis management and still get people to visit kind of that part of the state? And how does that benefit us down here?
Yeah. No, it's a very good question. You know, the biggest thing that we've been doing is looking at visitor perception around that storm. So right after it happened, we went out into the market and said, we need to figure out, like, how bad is this? You know, we know physically how bad it is. We need to figure out what's the perception and how likely is a traveler to even want to come to North Carolina right now, to Western North Carolina in particular. So that research came back just a couple of weeks after the storm, and it was shocking. It showed that there was a ton of misperceptions out there about the damage, about the areas of the state that were damaged, and about how...
I mean, some people thought the entire state was a disaster.
There were more people that thought the Piedmont and the Sandhills and areas like here in Pinehurst were affected by that storm.
Because we typically get the storms, not the mountains.
Yeah, than we would have ever have anticipated. Even though they knew it hit the mountains, they thought it was so widespread that it came over here. There was also a lot more people that thought it hit the coast. I think and this is my personal opinion, our team kind of coalesces around this notion. One of those reasons why people maybe had a wrong perception about the coast was we had a pretty active storm season on the coast this year. Not so much in terms of damage, thankfully, but as number of storms. And we think that maybe they just kind of confused it all and just thought, okay, oh gosh, all these storms in North Carolina. But the reality is there was more visitors out there in our core markets in the Southeast and Northeast and the Midwest that thought parts of the state that were totally fine and not affected were affected by Helene, and therefore we're not looking to plan a visit to North Carolina anytime soon.
Right.
Let alone the number of people that thought that all of Western North Carolina was just off the grid. And so that was the work that we had to do right away, was to put together some messaging and some content to explain to people what parts of the state are really truly affected by this to the point where you cannot or should not visit, and what areas are totally fine and open and welcoming visitors back to help with recovery efforts with a minimal disruption to your experience, and then what parts of the state, even in the West, were not affected by this at all. And so we immediately put together a fall color campaign. There was the area in the Smokies and really
Highlands,
south
Cashers,
of
Bryson
Asheville,
City.
totally unaffected. But the perception was that they were. And so we put together a campaign primarily targeted to areas south of them where they could drive up or fly up and get into there quickly and easily without going through places like Asheville and North that were affected. So we didn't promote it to Tennessee, for example, to get people to come up and experience fall color. Because not only were those areas not affected, but the fall color was still there to be had. They got blessed with how little damage the storm did to trees, and with the wind and the rain and all the science that comes along with it, they were going to have a really good year for fall color. So that was the first thing we did, was just try to save as much fall travel to the mountains as we could, because as you know, the mountains and the fall is their prime visitation season. So many of our friends out there, our DMOs out there, make the majority of their revenue in the fall to supply and substantiate, their businesses through the spring and the summer. So that was really important to try to do what we could to save it. From there, we then shifted our
ski season.
Ski season, for example. People were thinking, oh, we can't go skiing. No, I mean, we were, knock on wood, we were very blessed. Every single ski resort in the state was able to open on time without any effects from the storm as well. But to your point, we've got a big campaign right now that we started actually in December. The minute the first ski resorts open, we put together a big campaign with the North Carolina Ski Association, helping us out with it to promote skiing, tubing, winter fun, and all of our outdoor, winter destinations from the north to the south part of the mountain region. So,
talking about the campaign you've got out there right now, it's called For Real, VisitNC. Kind of a cute, fun. Talk about the concept and how effective it's been.
Yeah, so this campaign concept was going back to what we were talking about earlier about this sort of sea of sameness. Another thing that you often see when you look at DMOs and DMO marketing is same thing. Give me a nice picture of a destination, and I could probably swap out the logo and the name on it for 4 or 5 other destinations. We in North Carolina look just like our mountains look just like Tennessee. Looks, our beaches look like South Carolina. That's, great examples, for example. What we wanted to do was stand out in that sea of sameness. So this campaign concept is called For Real. And what we learned in our research and our data about what really makes North Carolina different than these competitor states is that people that visited North Carolina, I'll use the mountain analogy, people that visited the mountains in North Carolina and visited the mountains in Tennessee, even though that product, physically looks very similar, and experienced a more deeper, enriched, connected, experience when they came to North Carolina versus the Tennessee side of the Smokies, for example. And that was our signature calling card across the state, looking at the Sandhills, looking at the coast as well. People seem to have a more meaningful, connected, deeper, affected experience when they came to North Carolina. Well, that's great, but it's not that sexy. It's kind of hard to sell that, right? So our way of doing that was, okay, looking at that terminology, what's something that's similar, something it seemed like we were just a little bit more real, a little more like authentic, right? And so that was where the For Real nomenclature came from. The campaign is called For Real, Visit North Carolina. The pause matters, the punctuation matters, the comma matters. And what we're doing is the campaign and the ads are showing something that is very appealing here in North Carolina, but the copy or the audio that you're hearing over it is talking about an experience that you might have elsewhere that is less appealing.
Yeah.
So, for example, it would show people driving on the beach in the winter, promoting off-season travel, right? Having a great time, and then the audio coming over talks about elsewhere. Visitors are stuck in gridlock traffic.
Yeah.
And that's real, right? But the realness is if you come to North Carolina in the coast in the winter, you're not going to experience gridlock traffic. So that's kind of the juxtapose and the fun tongue-in-cheekness nature of it.
I love it. It's a great campaign. I love the one from Pinehurst. You got a couple playing Pinehurst number 2, and it says, you talk about the 19th hole, what you talked about, or what you experienced on the previous 18.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Elsewhere travelers are talking about these 18 holes. That's what the campaign and the creative concept around that is, and we love. We've got 2 ads running right now for Pinehurst. That's the first one, and the other one for you guys that we're running is really focusing on the culinary scene. To your point about how much we've really worked to help diversify the range of product offerings right now. So we're promoting that and some of the spa experience and just saying, come get away, eat, dine, experience the area and everything that it has to offer. And whether you actually play golf or not, you're going to have an amazing time.
And one thing, because we just got through the holidays, and I know one of my colleagues, she's very adamant that, love the Biltmore State. They got the Hallmark thing. We've got a Hallmark thing going on, too, in the village of Pinehurst. We truly believe that. And that's where the film office comes into play with Guy Gaster and does a great job, obviously, in Wilmington with the film studios, but obviously with other things going on, being able to pitch the film studio to, come to this little hamlet that, very few people get to experience, or something that's very different that is a Hallmark kind of experience. It's another great aspect of Visit and seeing what you guys do for tourism is a film industry.
Thanks for asking about that. Yeah, and one thing people need to know, we just were able to release towards the end of the year our latest impact figures and numbers for the film industry last year, and we saw our second best year ever for filming in North Carolina. That's pre-pandemic. That goes back as far as we've been able to track. So film is back in North Carolina.
it's great.
It was gone for a while, and we've been really
Again, we lost a lot of it to Atlanta, because I used to live in Atlanta before I came here 6-7 years ago.
Yep.
And there was a huge influx of a lot of production in the Atlanta area.
And now what we're seeing in Atlanta is that a lot of the productions are getting a little bit oversaturated. There's so much filming in Atlanta that a lot of these productions are calling North Carolina again, saying, "Hey, can we come back? We'd like to have a little more room to breathe and not be one of 4 or 5, productions going on at the same time." And so we're becoming a little more attractive because we aren't as crowded as they are right now, and because we've got such a more diverse product to offer. We have sound stages where you can go and create, the sets you want and control the environment. And then we have all the natural beauty. And we have sound stages here. We have, good production scene going on in Charlotte as well. So it's diversifying more than just in the hub that is Wilmington. But it's been really great and really beneficial. The amount of jobs that are supported by the film industry, the amount of local producers and staff and crew that are being hired to help support these films is great, and it's spreading that economic development around the state, because when they take the film production off studio, off set, and go around the state to film on location, all of that lodging, all of the food and beverage and the catering that they do, that's money spent in local and oftentimes smaller and more rural communities that wouldn't have had it otherwise. So it's a great opportunity for us to continue to grow. And one of the reasons why we, with increased funding, could do a lot more to help promote film.
Absolutely. I could sit here and talk destination marketing with you all day. We could go on for hours. As we wrap this up, talk about, barring hurricanes, blizzards, locusts, what's on the agenda for 2025? What should we look for from the state of North Carolina from a tourism standpoint, getting people into the state and into our area even?
Yeah, our first and foremost, we're going to make sure that everybody understands that the whole state is open for business again and is welcoming visitors back. I think secondly, what we're going to do is expand our footprint even more, go deeper into some of these more emerging markets that we've been promoting in places like the Midwest, places like the Northeast, getting a little bit more, entrenched in there, going deeper into some of those not obvious markets up there. And then also international. We've been able to increase the amount of budget that we do have to spend more on international. So we're going to see a lot more concerted efforts to help push more international travel, which has been a staple, as you mentioned, that Heidi's been overseeing for us for years. Yep. But this year is a year to really take that to the next level as well. So that, along with our owned media content strategy, we're piggybacking off of you guys and doing a lot more owned media, a lot more of our own podcast and some of our production stuff to really help get the word out there and learn some best practices from you guys.
Well, if Heidi needs a travel colleague to go international, I know I would go. I've got some colleagues
that
would like to do it.
You're ready again.
I'm ready again.
All right.
So let's go international.
Let's do it.
We have not played golf yet, so we need to get you down here. I know we could have played over in the UK, but let's get you down to Pinehurst sometime and tee it up this spring.
I would love to. I just bought my 4-year for first set of clubs, so I can't wait to bring her down as well.
We'll go down to Thistledew in the Cradle and go hang out, and then go have a drink later.
Perfect.
Maybe not with the little one, but just the adults.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, thanks so much. Director of Marketing with VisitNC. Appreciate you being with us at Paradise in the Pines.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to learn more about tourism in Moore County, the Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Aberdeen area, go to our website, homeofgolf.com. If you want to watch our videos, we've got over 400 of them. Dan's just cranking out videos on a daily basis. Go to our YouTube channel, Home of American Golf. If you love this podcast, the award-winning Paradise in the Pines, download it and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.